Good morning, everybody. John with you. Welcome back to my channel and to another video today happening, filming on the morning of election day. So I hope everybody has a good election day. I know everybody's not going to be happy one way or the other. That's how elections are, But anyway, have a safe and good election day regardless of the outcome. Now, I have somebody that I subscribe to. Her channel is called Leila's Lovely Life, which I will link below so you can check it out if you would like to. But like many people, her 2020 year has been, a real roller coaster ride of a lot of downs, actually, a lot of downs, and having, as many people have, all sorts of crises, financial, existential, and otherwise. So, she started, I was very surprised to see the other day, she started a series I think it's called 30 Days of Thankfulness. Anyway, the idea is I believe she's doing a video every day, but things to be thankful for in the month of November, which is our American holiday of Thanksgiving, close to the end of the month. So I thought, I was really inspired by that. I thought it was such a great idea because, yes, this has been a very negative year in terms of, so much anger and hostility over race relations, over politics, over the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. Just, we're really have been in a bad state, I think, this year. And so I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea to take the month of November, this Thanksgiving month, and let's concentrate and speak, because there is power in the words, you know what I mean? There's power in affirmation, whatever, to like speak things that we are thankful for in this month. And I have to say, I'm not going to do a video every day on it because I have so many ideas for videos now. It's like I didn't know what I was going to do for a while, and now I'm just getting all sorts of ideas and I want to do different things. But I felt like this one was so important and relevant and valid that I wanted to participate in it. So I'm definitely going to do, I don't know how many, but I'll definitely do thank you videos throughout this month on different topics that I'm thankful for. So having said that, let me say I am actually a very thankful person. I think I've come through this year amazingly well, and I could do a lot of thank you videos, really, of things that I'm thankful for in my life. I could do a lot. So I'm going to start today on one of the very basic things and one of the early things that I am really thankful for. During Thanksgiving, and that would be saying I am very thankful for the way that I was brought up, the manner in which I was brought up, and I mean this literally. There is not a day really that goes by that I don't stop and think how thankful I am that I was brought up in the way that I was brought up, with the family I was brought up with. I mean, your childhood can make you or break you, and I know a lot of people that, have had not a great family upbringing, or a lot of problems in the relationships of their parents, or et cetera, where, the situation wasn't good, and it affects them throughout their lifetime, their way of thinking or their reasoning or whatever, it can kind of screw you up for a long time. The way that you're brought up, if it isn't a positive experience. For me, I'll just explain a little bit. I may intersperse some pictures here and there. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. I never did organize my pictures very well. So, but anyway, I was started out just as a typical nuclear family. Father, mother, and myself, and a brother who's 3 years older than I am, and we were living in upstate New York. And in elementary school, I had a very wonderful childhood. Lots of fond memories of that time. But, I was very young. But elementary school, I had plenty of friends. Great. I mean, Christmases and, great Halloweens. I love Halloween. I have wonderful memories of that time period. So, that part of my life was extremely positive. Now, we moved when I finished with the fifth grade to South Carolina, to the South Carolina. My aunt and uncle, my entire family, I should say, is originally from Pennsylvania, all of them, but none of them ended up staying there in the end. My aunt and uncle, who had moved a few times, ended up in South Carolina. And the story is, and I'm sticking to it because I really have no other explanation for how it worked out that way, but her theory is that she actually prayed everybody to South Carolina, her family. She prayed everybody to relocate there. Um, and God was listening or something, because it happened. They had lived there a couple of years in South Carolina, and my grandparents, who were in Pennsylvania, up and sold their house without telling anybody and moved to the same neighborhood, same little neighborhood outside of this small town in South Carolina. Then shortly after that, my father had a situation with his work where they were transferring him and he didn't want to go. And they discussed it and decided that he would just quit and they would move to South Carolina and kind of have a new beginning and go where my aunt and uncle and grandparents were. My mother and my aunt, who are sisters, and they were very, very close. So that's what happened. And my father, so sixth grade, I was in South Carolina. My father was looking for work. Eventually found work in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that was a little ways away, but not that far. So we moved to Charlotte and started our life there. But my father died kind of close to the end of it was April, close to the end of the school year. And he had a heart attack. So now, obviously, that was very traumatic, very big deal. And we moved after that back to South Carolina and lived with my grandparents for a while my mother was, figuring out what to do. And, well, she decided that there was a house for sale in the neighboring little subdivision. We lived outside of this small town in South Carolina, and there's nothing around these two little subdivisions. They're just these little, groups of maybe 40 houses or something on two sides of a small lake. And my other family lived in the area called Lakewood, and my mother bought a house that was for sale, that they were finishing building in Dogwood Acres. So we moved there, right into the next door neighborhood. So after that, it was like every relative that came to visit moved there. It was the weirdest thing. It really was. So I ended up with two sets of great aunts and uncles living in Lakewood, and then another single great aunt came down and moved in, and eventually my uncle, who was in Ohio, also moved into the town. So what happened in relationship to this video that I want to say, there's two things particularly about my childhood that I'm really, the way I was brought up, that I'm really, really thankful for. One of them is that I was brought up around a lot of older people. Like I said, in elementary school, I had sort of a typical childhood, but once I moved to South Carolina, we ended up having so many relatives, older relatives there. I didn't really socialize that much with other kids in school, in junior high and high school. I mean, I had some friends, but I didn't really that much go out and hang out with them, or high school kids go riding on cars up and down the street and whatever. And I just never did any of that. I was pretty much, my social life was with all of my older relatives, and I would walk across the lake. Well, not walk across the lake, but walk next to the lake, go over and hang out with them. My mother worked shift work, so sometimes she was there in the day and sometimes she was not, and she would work some graveyards, and they altered their shifts around. So I would go over for meals quite a lot over at my aunt and aunt and uncles or grandparents. I would hang out with them and just spend, we'd play card games and board games at night. And then we would often have dinners together. It was very common, for my aunt to call up and say, "Hey, everybody come over for, whatever," and vice versa. And we were eating in groups at each other's houses. So our Christmases were literally like something out of Norman Rockwell. I mean, there would be like 20 people and a million presents. But I don't know, like I didn't realize until I went to college how unusual that was, because I hadn't socialized all that much with my high school and junior high friends, that it was all with my family. I didn't realize how weird that was until I went to college, because college was a real different experience for me, and I definitely was like a social butterfly and all of that during college, but not at all. I was much more geeky and reserved as a kid. But I'm so thankful for that, in retrospect. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I loved the time I spent with them. Everybody was, in their 70s at that point, except for my aunt and uncle and my mother. But, all the other relatives, all of them were old, quite old, even then. And I just looked at them in my eyes, and it's like that's where you wanted to be in life. I mean, I was around them, and they were, they didn't work. They didn't travel a lot. They weren't like, oh, going on cruises and everything. They were not doing that. But they just had a beautiful life. Like they could relax, they could enjoy themselves. They listened to a lot of music and, have dinner with your friends and relatives. And just like I thought that was the ideal time. That's when you really, really enjoy life. Not something to not look forward to. It's something to absolutely, look forward to. And I feel like I also learned to not take a lot of things for granted, because my father had died very unexpectedly, a heart attack, and quite young, and all my relatives were older. That you just never knew, how long you had or what days you had. So you had to really enjoy each other and enjoy the time that you had. And I'm so thankful for having been brought up that way, and I think it's really impacted my life. And I felt so much love in my family. That's the thing. Like, I went through a fair amount of bullying and whatnot in junior high, especially a lot of bullying. I mean, people knew I was gay before I knew I was gay, or before I knew what that really was, or whatever. Like I didn't, really. But I was picked on, ferociously in junior high school. But my family was always like such a shelter for me, and it was such a place where I just felt like an unconditional love from them. I felt like no matter what I did, there was nothing that I could do that was going to separate, their love from me. Like they were with me and for me no matter what. And you can't put a price tag on that, on making a child feel that way, and how that's positively affected me my entire life. The other thing I really appreciate about being the way I was brought up is I was brought up in a religious environment. Not super, super religious, but they were all Presbyterians. I think all of them, my family, yeah. And they were, especially my aunt and uncle, they were quite active in the church. I mean, my aunt and uncle were Sunday school teachers for like 30 years for like adults. And later on, my mom became quite active as well. She was an elder and a deacon, and they were also elders and deacons. Everybody was very like involved in the church, and we would go every week, go to Sunday school, go to vacation Bible school, and go to everything. And in addition to being Presbyterian, or God's frozen people, as we called them, for quite a while, they were also involved with Full Gospel Businessmen's Association. I don't know if that's even around anymore, but that was a very kind of holy roller, speaking in tongues and healings and all this sort of stuff. And we did that for a while. And there were pros and cons about that, but I think, it was good to kind of have a different view of the same religion, to have a little bit of both going on. But I have to say, I'm really thankful that I was brought up in a religious environment. And like I said, not super uber, like strictly whatever, but just in a, regularly church attendance and some other things, because I feel like, I don't know, I've had a lot of friends that most people go through existential crisis, right? It's in your 20s or 30s or something. People are start to like are exposed maybe to other ideas, and or they kind of, if they weren't brought up in anything, like I've had several good friends that were not brought up in a religious environment at all. Like their parents were either just atheists or they just didn't practice anything, backsliding Buddhists and that sort of thing. Like they didn't really practice anything, so they were brought up really with nothing, um, which is whatever, but I think I know, like, when they've kind of gone through existential crisis and trying to figure out what they believe or what they think, it's been a really, really hard time for them and very confusing. And I think that I've been through that as well. But what I appreciate about my upbringing is that being brought up in with a structure, with some kind of religious, spiritual structure, it gives you a framework so that when you start to be exposed to other things, some things that you may like, you may incorporate, some things that you don't, or whatever. But it's like you have a framework and an approach. You know what the questions are. I mean, sometimes people having these sort of crises, like they haven't been exposed to everything, don't even know what the questions are. They're just like, I don't know, I don't know. And they don't have any peace in them about that. So I feel like, I really appreciate it because I'm not limited to it. I mean, I call myself a Christian, and I'm sure there are some people that would probably disagree with that by their definition. I also call myself a pantheist because, Christian pantheist, is that a thing? I don't know. Where I just feel like there are other spiritual and religious ideas, and they may be very valid, and things may coexist. Many things are possible, and we're like fish in a fishbowl, and we're looking out. We don't really know what we're looking out at. When we're looking out, it's like, what are those giant things walking around, and what are those food sort of appears every so often. I don't know. Like it's kind of like that. We're just trying to make sense of what we're experiencing. So I'm really glad I was brought up in that structure, and it always gives me, a structure, a framework, something to fall back on and think, okay, this is what I was brought up with, and now let me think about these other things I'm hearing or learning about, and do they sit well with me or do they not? And you can like make your own decision, So I'm really thankful for that, because I think if I didn't have that, I would not be as sort of centered about spirituality as I am, not having all the answers. But I feel very good about it, and I feel good about being open. And it also, there's just always something you can fall back on. The going gets tough and you get confused, and you can just go, this is what I was brought up with, and I can be great in that. So, and I can also look at other things and it's all good, like it's okay. And I don't think I would have that idea without the structure that I was brought up in. So I am very, very thankful on this day and every day for the way that I was brought up. And I think the way you bring up your children, sometimes maybe you don't think of it as much. I'm not a parent, so I can't say. But trust me, if you're a loving parent and you support your children and you just create memories, I don't mean money or expensive trips or whatever, just if you create a nice environment, you make them feel loved no matter what, they will eventually appreciate it forever. I mean, I can't even I'm going to do a separate video about my mother and talk about her, but I just can't tell you, in words, how much I appreciate the environment that I was brought up in, and the unconditional love that I felt, the spiritual structure that gave me comfort, that still gives me comfort, but allows me to view the universe in many ways. I'm also very Gemini in that way, like I can see things on different sides in different ways and agree with both. That's where I am. So, and I think that's because of my upbringing, and I'm really thankful for it. So on this day and every day, I'm very thankful for the way in which I was brought up. And I would challenge you, any of you out there during this month of Thanksgiving, it's a good time because it's been a crazy year. Let's take stock and look at your life and look at the things and the people that you're thankful for, and let's put words to it. Let's speak it, because I think it's good for each other to hear it, to hear that, yeah, there's a lot of negativity and negative things going on. I'm not going to comment on all of that. I'm just going to say, let's uplift something too. Let's look and see what we're thankful for, what God has given to us, or whatever you believe in, what God has given to us, and let's be thankful for it. And have a good election day. And, I hope it goes well, or that you are able to deal with whatever happens afterwards, whatever.